word. Now that it seems clear Parliament will not function and the hope of reforms to revive the economy could remain unfulfilled, we ask, how do India's top business leaders view the government? That's with the Executive Vice Chairman of Ashok Leyland, R. Shesha Sai, who will be joining us shortly, the Chairperson of Biocon, Karan Mazumdar-Shaw, who's with us in Bangalore, the President of FICCI, Raju Kanore, also joining us shortly, and the former editor of the Financial Express, Prem Shankar Jha. This is Mazumdar-Shaw. With reforms stalled, the economy slowing down, FDR drying up, scams proliferating and India's image taking an international beating, how do you view the present government?
Well, you know, it's obviously a very, very sad state of affairs. I think India Inc. is crying itself hoarse, trying to get government to act. Government seems to be in a survival mode, and they seem to feel that indecision and inaction is a good survival strategy. But more than anything else, Karan, I think, development is being denied, growth is being denied, and we really need a government that is not in denial and a government that is serious about making sure that it does not topple the economic agenda for development. Today we are really at a precipice.
Quote to you what Mr. Narayan Murthy told the Economic Times on Saturday. He said, "The world expected a lot from us, and compared to that expectation, we have fallen very, very short." And then he added pointedly, and therefore I would say, this is worse than 1991. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. In fact, I think it's very, very hard to sell the India story. We are clearly seeing that there is a sharp decline in investment in India. There is a sharp decline in even local investment in India, which really tells you that there is something seriously wrong, with the Indian investment environment. And, it's very sad because in this very gloomy global economic firmament, India had an opportunity to shine. But unfortunately, the government is not allowing us to do anything about growth. And this 5.5% GDP growth, if these are the levels at which we are going to grow, believe me, it is going to be very serious, and I think everyone understands that.
Prem Shankar Jha, from your standpoint as a commentator, but also from your standpoint as someone who understands international opinion, how much damage was done to India's international standing as a prime investment destination, first by the retreat and reversal over FDI in retail in December, and then secondly by this year's budget decision to overrule the Supreme Court and retrospectively amend tax laws?
I think long before these two things came, people had already decided to leave. This only confirmed their opinion that India's that the government has completely lost control. The fact is, I've just come back from Europe. It's not simply that people are not talking about India. People are talking about India, Karan. And they're talking about India with great glee. They're saying, look, the flash in the pan is over. The rising Asia is not rising so much. Don't forget, people do talk about China, but they're writing mostly about China also, about the increasing political and economic troubles that China is facing.
Sure.
Its recession, its overinvestment, etc. So the point is, there is a great deal of pleasure being taken in the fact that we are collapsing. And don't believe your 5.3% growth rate. It is completely bogus.
Okay. Raju Kanore, let me ask you a question as President of FICCI. The Prime Minister has spoken of reviving animal spirits and restoring investor confidence. Shortly after that, Mr. Chidambaram spoke of modifying policies to meet the expectations of different stakeholders. Yet we notice that Parliament is completely paralyzed. The hope of reform that needed to be passed certainly isn't happening. Meanwhile, FDI in June has fallen by an astonishing 78%, and in just the first 4 months of this year, more than 50% of the fiscal deficit target has already been exceeded. So despite the euphoric words from the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, do you fear that 2012-2013 is going to prove to be a pretty dismal year?
I think it's quite clear that action is required. There is no doubt about that. And what is probably different in the last 1 month is that we seem to be recognizing at least that we have a problem, and we are no longer in a denial mode. And that, I think, at least is a small encouraging sign. What we really need to do is translate a lot of all this understanding and talk and convert that into policy action. And unless and until we do that, I personally think that the kind of negative sentiments that have been created are only going to get perpetrated further. So I would only urge that at this point of time in our country, what we really need to do is set our political differences aside and work towards building back the nation to where it was and where it is capable of being.
Can I interrupt and put this to you? Can I interrupt and put this to you? At the moment, political differences are not being set aside; they are becoming more entrenched. But there was one small glimmer of hope, and I want to ask how much heart you take from the Partha-Sarathy Shom draft report, which talks of postponing GAAR by 3 years, exempting treaty states like Singapore and Mauritius, and abolishing capital gains tax on the transfer of listed securities. Does that give you hope, or do you fear that this may be a report that politicians will fail to accept and implement?
I would love to see this report implemented, because I feel that we don't need another millstone around our neck when we already have so many. And the implementation of GAAR is only going to, worsen the sentiment that we have in the economy. I think some of these issues, that is the retrospective tax amendment, the possibility of introduction of GAAR, and I think the lack of decision making as far as policy decisions on FDI in retail or in the insurance sector reforms, and reduction in interest rates, lack of control of inflation, lack of stimulus for investments.
Okay.
I mean, each one of these is really adding to our woes, and GAAR, if it were to be implemented now, would only make things worse rather than better. So Partha-Sarathy Shom's report is actually a welcome whiff of breeze in this entire scenario, and I do hope that it would get implemented in the spirit in which it has been made.
Now we have Mr. R. Sheshasai with us, unfortunately on the telephone, not through our studio in Chennai, where unfortunately we're having a couple of satellite problems because of the weather. Mr. Sheshasai, we're talking about glimmers of hope on the horizon, and I'm asking people just how real they are and how much heart they take. Another glimmer of hope is that there is once again talk of pushing through the insurance and pension bills, and Mr. Chidambaram is said to be, according to sources, keen to push FDI levels up to 49%. Do you see this as just talk and just speculation, or do you believe, despite the paralysis in Parliament, which almost ensures it's not going to happen in this session, it might happen 2-3 months down the road? So is this a positive development, or is this just more hope that's going to prove illusory?
Well, I think we need several such positive steps. Just one is not going to do. And it's also important that whatever is being talked about gets implemented, so there is confidence that the government is going to execute their intentions. Today there is this crisis of confidence, and I think it can only be set aside by a number of very quick positive steps. But let me say one thing. I think to echo Raju Kanoria's viewpoint on this, I think it's somewhat unfair to be only talking about the government's inability to act. I think we are playing out not the India story, not the glorious India story, but the India crab story. I think we are pulling every crab that wants to come out of the hole is being pulled back by every other crab in the hole, and I think we're just playing that out. And we have to tell not merely to the rest of the world, but ourselves, that yes, we can pull ourselves together and have the interests of the nation, interests of the people ahead of petty politics. Okay. And therefore, everybody has to play its role. And as you say, including the media. is including that it must be realized that sensationalism up to a point is fine, but beyond that is counterproductive.
Okay.
And we are only precipitating a sentiment of negativity, which is extremely, extremely concerning for the entire nation.
I'll just point out to the audience that what you referred to was the India crab story, not as some might have thought, the India crap story, although maybe in the present circumstances the two words are actually synonymous. We've talked for a moment, Mrs. Mazumdar-Shaw, about glimmers of hope on the horizon. There is one aspect of reform that's badly needed where there is no hope at all. I'm talking about FDI in retail. Mamata Banerjee remains staunchly opposed to it. Mulayam Singh Yadav has now publicly expressed his disinclination. The BJP and the left haven't shifted their position. So despite the fact Anand Sharma is trying to find an opening by suggesting that states have a prerogative to implement it or not as they want, do you think that this is one badly needed reform that simply won't happen?
You know, Karan, I personally believe that, let's park FDI aside for a moment. What about investing in infrastructure? There's a huge decline in investment in infrastructure. There's a huge decline in India Inc. Investing in just new projects. So there is a huge issue about investor confidence in this country, both externally and internally. So if we can focus on our economic development through infrastructure development, I think we can actually revive the economic growth.
Okay.
I mean, here is a country where we need to create real jobs. We need to get economic development, and without economic development, there are not going to be real jobs. So we are in a very, very serious crisis.
Prem Shankar Jai,
I'm not so concerned. I mean, because this is not about coalition politics. They don't need anyone's consent to invest in, infrastructure.
Sure.
What happened to the 20 kilometers of roads that we were supposed to build?
It simply hasn't happened. You're absolutely right. Prem Shankar Jai, you've just heard three of India's top business leaders, the president of FICCI, the executive vice chairman of Ashok Leyland, and the chairperson of Biocon. Do you get the feeling from their comments that people like them are beginning to write off the UPA government, that their disillusionment has reached a peak?
Sorry, Karan, I don't wish to answer this question. I wish to take up precisely what the Vice Chairman of Biocon said. Please, the real issue is, listen, you may want all the infrastructure in the world. You may open up your doors to all the foreign investment in the world. If they don't come, there's nothing you can do. Why are they not coming? The answer is very simple. The interest rates today are between 10.5 and 17.25% in this country.
Okay.
This is the range at which you're taking it. Okay, your manufacturing industry is actually the price rise in manufacturing is 8% less than the price rise of the raw materials that they use in manufacturing.
Okay.
They've shaved their profits to the limit. There is no way they can go any further. Now, one more thing, please. The Reserve Bank keeps saying not only that we will not lower interest rates, but the interest rates will be pegged to inflation. The inflation in India is not caused by forces in India. They are being caused by forces abroad.
Quite
Please
right.
hear me, let me finish. Hold on. The result is that nobody who comes to invest here
you're going
knows
off
what
our
will happen to his
subject completely.
investment.
You've gone off our subject completely.
I'm not answering your question.
I know you've hijacked the show, so I'm stopping you because I want to stick to my subject and not be hijacked. Let me come to you and put to you, Mr. Kanoria, the question that Prem didn't answer, because it's a critical question that the audience cares deeply about. Do I get correctly the feeling that people like you, Mrs. Shaw and Mr. Shesasai are so disillusioned with the government that you're beginning to write it off?
All we need is one or two strong decisions, and I think this disillusionment will very quickly disappear. It's just a question of getting one or two big ticket items on the agenda.
Can I interrupt and ask this? Suppose those one or two big items do not happen, then what?
So, you see, till they happen, I think confidence cannot be restored. I mean, there are two or three issues. One is confidence in industry. Second is confidence in the decision makers. I think the decision makers today are not willing to take decisions because they are afraid that it is going to backfire on them.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to restore that confidence in decision makers, which is probably even more critical than restoring confidence in industry, because unless and until that happens, how can we have any kind of sanctity of contract in the system? After all, there are promises made by governments, and those promises have to be kept.
We are going to take a break at that point. Sadly, we are going to lose Mr. Kanoria, who has to catch a plane. But we are going to come back and pick up that very issue that he raised. Is industry losing confidence in decision makers? Has the dream team of 2009 of Manmohan Singh, P. Chidambaram and Montek Singh Ahluwalia let down the country? That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to The Last Word. How do captains of Indian industry view the government and the economic situation facing the country? Mr. Sheshasai, in 2009, the combination of Manmohan Singh, P. Chidambaram and Montek Singh Ahluwalia was considered a dream team. Clearly, that isn't the case today. But do you feel let down by them?
Well, I think there is a great degree of disillusionment about leadership in general, and which is very concerning. Without naming individuals, I think today the worry that everybody has is that we don't see leaders who are capable of pulling this country out of this negative sentiment that it has precipitated in. But having said this, I do think that these very same leaders are capable of delivering. They need to not get distracted by the current cacophony of all the voices that you hear in the system, and somewhere they have to take courage and keep all this aside and move forward with the agenda which they are so very familiar with. They've been authors of this agenda. There's nothing wrong with that agenda. They just have to push forward and make things happen. And you expect the leadership to face obstacles, to get over these obstacles and deliver. That's all leadership is all about.
Mrs. Mazumdar-Shaw, in 1991, when India was going through an economic crisis, the Prime Minister was then the Finance Minister, and he showed great vision and leadership. This time round, many people feel he's simply not stepping up to the plate. That vision and that leadership is missing. A, do you agree with that? And B, if you do, what explanation do you have for the failure to lead this time round?
Well, like Sesh said, there is a leadership crisis. I think we are seeing indecision and lack of decisions making, not only at the political leadership level, but even at the bureaucracy level. And I think that is what is really paralyzing economic growth. At the same time, let's look at some states like Gujarat and Bihar, which are growing at a much higher level than the rest of the country, which means it's very clear. The rest of the country has the same growth potential, but it is being denied by lack of decision making, which includes even in my own state of Karnataka. When decisions are not taken, when leadership is undergoing a certain crisis, we are seeing this slowing of economic growth.
Very quickly, do you think someone like Narendra Modi, with his reputation in Gujarat for administrative leadership and economic leadership, is the sort of man we need? I believe you tweeted something along those lines.
I don't think I made that. I think I have certainly tweeted that we need to see what we can adopt and learn from in states like Gujarat and Bihar, and see how we can take it to the rest of the country. But I think this can be done by all the names you just mentioned.
Okay.
I think Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, and others can actually take this particular model and take it to the rest of India. But it's all about decision making. It's not rocket science. I think we have all the ingredients of growth, but we are simply shackling it all up.
Very quickly, Prem Shankar Jha, what would be your advice to the Prime Minister today?
bring down interest rates by at least 3% to where they were in March 2010, and take a number of decisions which he knows perfectly well, because people have told him over and over again from industry as well as from the economic fraternity, which will reduce the fiscal deficit and the excess of government spending by up to 50 to 100,000 crores. Okay. It's perfectly possible to do that without losing popularity, and I think that is the important thing. We have so many distortions in our subsidy system that if you remove them, delivery increases, the expenditure goes down. These are just the two things you do, and immediately Reserve Bank will bring down its interest rates, and you see what happens.
All right, let's hope the Prime Minister is listening. Let's hope the Finance Minister heeds the advice that he's got today. If not, the situation could go steadily from bad to very worse. My thanks to Karan Mazumdar-Shaw and Mr. Sheshasai for joining me. My apologies to him for the fact that line from our Madras studio simply didn't work. And my thanks also to Mr. Kadore, who have been. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.